Today we have scheduled a debate between Leon Weinstein and Sergey Zhirnov.
And Sergey Zhirnov, you have the floor first. The announced topic is, whose spy is Trump, and is Leon a spy at all?
So this topic is quite close to me because I just recently finished my new book, which will be published at the end of May this year in French. In France, my first chapter is called Agent Krasnov. How did the KGB recruit Donald Trump? With a question. Or did the KGB recruit Donald Trump as an agent? That's why I'm in prison, so to speak. But honestly, I don't really want to tell you everything just yet because, so to speak, the book hasn't been published yet. And that's why I still won't tell you all the secrets of what I wrote in that chapter. Most importantly, here's what needs to be said. As for the question, so to speak, first of all, I should probably introduce myself a little bit for those viewers who don't know me at all. Yes, that's right. My name is Sergey Zhirnov. I'm almost 65. I will be in 10 days. I am a former employee of the Committee for State Security. I worked in the first Chief Directorate, which is the foreign intelligence of the Soviet Union's KGB. I left there in 1992 with the rank of Major. I worked in Directorate S and in the Fourth American Department of that directorate. But later I worked on France. My last long-term assignment was in France in 1991 and 1992, where I studied at the National School of Administration under the Prime Minister of France. This is a training ground for the French elite, kind of like the Academy of Social Sciences under the Central Committee of the CPSU, if we compare it to Soviet realities. So I served in the KGB starting from 1984 because that's when I entered the Red Banner Institute to study. That's a training ground for spies. I studied there for 3 years. I was assigned to study Spanish, a new foreign language. So I entered there the same year as Putin because all those who spread the legend, the lie that Putin studied with Schwetz in 1980, that's a lie. Putin entered KAI in 1984. That's written in his own autobiographical book, and I can confirm it. However, we studied in different departments. He studied in a 1-year department, and I studied in a 3-year department. After that, I came to work in Yasnevo at the intelligence headquarters. Leon, I saw some video of him where he talks about this topic, and he says something very unpleasant about me. He says that he doubts that I served in the KGB, doubts that I served in intelligence, doubts that I was a real intelligence officer and a senior KGB officer. So I have to answer him that I have documents for all of this, which, by the way, are posted on the internet. That's the whole story. I sued the Foreign Intelligence Service to get my diploma. All my credentials as a spy and an employee of the First Chief Directorate are confirmed by the Moscow City Court and the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation. So I have all the documents. My military ID as a reserve officer. I have a party card that says I studied at the Red Army Institute and worked in the First Chief Directorate at Military Unit 54,282. That's how it is in that sense. I have all the proof that I'm qualified to talk about this topic. If you ask whether Trump was a KGB agent, then I, as a former and senior officer of the KGB Foreign Intelligence, have to say that I have not seen his personal file. And since I haven't seen his personal file, I personally cannot claim that Trump was an agent with the code name Krasnov. Бывший офицер разведки. But General Musayev from Kazakhstan spoke on this topic, who was the former head of the National Security Agency of Kazakhstan and the former head of the security service of President Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan. Last year, in 2025, in February, when Trump came to the White House, he said that Trump had been recruited back in 1987 as Agent Krasnov.
Шестым управлением КГБ. Я потом
last year in February. Trump was recruited during the time of the Soviet Union. And the KGB, yes, definitely, that's a clear answer, 100%. When he came to the Soviet Union in 1987, did the KGB work on him? Yes, definitely, 100%. The KGB worked on him. Could the KGB have recruited him? They absolutely could have recruited him. That's a 100% answer. In that year, in February, did Trump's profile attract interest? He was recruited at the time, and Trump's profile was of 100% interest to the KGB. Is General Musayev a serious person who is from the security services? Yes, General Musayev appears to be a serious person. Lieutenant General Amelchenko also spoke on this topic in Ukraine last February. A serious figure in the security services who worked in the SBU, who was a deputy of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for 18 years. Yes, definitely, he is a serious person.
И самое главное другое.
Recruited as an agent. If Trump is president, then if he were a KGB agent, he wouldn't be doing anything different from what he's doing now. Namely, he is destroying the United States of America from within. He is destroying American government institutions. He is destroying the international system that was formed with NATO partners, and so on. In other words, he is working openly. In February, Trump was recruited as an agent last year in February. Trump
Вот так коротко.
was recruited at that time.
In the year in February, Trump is on the screen. Well, that's just absolutely certain. Thank you very much, Sergey. Leon, the floor is yours.
Last year in February, recruited time in understood.
Thank you very much. Leon, the floor is yours regarding what, I don't know how the image is right now. Leon will speak, and then, as I understand, there will be comments back and forth and your questions. So, Leon, it's your turn.
Yes, of course. Sergey, to be honest, I don't remember ever doubting whether it was you or someone else. Saying that he was a KGB officer, he didn't actually work there. Because from my point of view, well, only crazy people would say, I worked in the KGB, and that's it, he didn't work there. It's like saying, I like to eat crap in the morning, for example. If you don't like it, why eat it? Well, that's good. People often ask me, what did Trump actually do? Why did it become such a thing? What did Trump really do? Not what people say about him, but what did he actually do? Let's stick to the facts, because otherwise you could just say he was in America in the past. Some say he's for NATO, others say he's against NATO. So let's try to focus on the facts. First, under Trump, the American economy showed the best results in half a century. Unemployment dropped to 3.5%. That's historic. Wages actually increased for the working class, for Black Americans and Latinos, not just on paper, but in their pockets. Second, he destroyed ISIS as a state. He did it last year in February. This is Qasem Soleimani, a general who organized the killing of hundreds of American soldiers and who was building an Iranian terrorist network throughout the Middle East. This was part of the Abraham Accords. This is an absolutely brilliant achievement. Israel and the Arab countries, these are the Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, normalized relations. Last year in February, Trump was recruited as one of the biggest gas players in the world. Energy independence means that America does not depend on the kings of Saudi Arabia or the leaders, as they are now called, the KGB, the Central Committee, and others in Russia. Sixth, all 4 years of the first term, there was peace in Europe. Putin did not touch Ukraine. Biden came, and a year later, the invasion began. Coincidence or Putin? Last year, with some you can, with some you can't. Seventh, the border. For decades, all presidents said it was impossible to stop illegal immigration. Trump stopped it, and not in years, but in months. Well, eighth, let's say, we'll stop here. NATO, yes, that's the one. He was recruited as an agent at the time. He made the Europeans pay for their own security. Before Trump, most NATO countries spent less than 2% of their GDP on defense. Last year, in February, American presidents asked, persuaded, and wrote letters to Europe. Trump said this, if you guys don't pay, if you don't fulfill your obligations, then you're not fulfilling your obligations. As an agent, budgets, the alliance became stronger. So Trump did not destroy NATO. He saved it. These are facts, not opinions, not sympathies. Facts. Можно любить Трампа, можно ненавидеть. Trump is recruited into, he's rude, yes. He says things that make many people cringe, yes. He makes mistakes, of course, sometimes big ones, of course. I understand people who don't like his style, his manner, his tweets, his character. That's a normal reaction. But personally, I judge a president not by whether it's pleasant to have coffee with him. Last year, fact, the borders were functioning, fact. The Middle East has shifted, fact. Putin was watching quietly, fact. ISIS has been destroyed, fact. Personally, I don't need a president who speaks beautifully and does nothing. Recruited in time. As for speeches, not a single real result that would change the world. I choose results.
I agree with 90% of what he said. About last year in February, they asked me, well, I don't like Trump as a person. I really don't like him. But when people talk and discuss what he actually did, the facts, I absolutely agree with what Leon said. Moreover, I can even add more facts about Trump. He was recruited during the time of the American agent. The formation of the Ukrainian army was disrupted, transferred, and in February, the month of arrival. In this regard, of course, we can also add that Trump was recruited at the time through the Baltic Sea. And indeed, during his time, construction was slowed down, and at least the new branch was not launched. And when Biden returned, Biden lifted these sanctions. So in this sense, we have absolutely no disagreement on these factors. In February, when Leon had said that Putin kept quiet, here I can argue, because actually during Trump's first term, the war in Ukraine was ongoing. He was recruited at the time as a Russian agent in Luhansk and Donetsk. And Trump, during the 4 years of his first term, practically did nothing about it. And Putin continued this war. The only thing is that last year in February, Trump was recruited. There was time to stop it, for Putin to leave Donbass, Donetsk, because by then it was already clear to everyone that it was a Russian provocation, that Russian troops were involved there. There were no separatists. The separatists were just used as cover. Last year, Trump, my cousin from the Moscow region, from Krasnogorsk, was in... As a role, he was pretending to be a Ukrainian. He is a former KGB officer, and he was running around with a machine gun as a Ukrainian, supposedly a separatist. All of this was decided in Surkov's office. Funds were allocated by Zhirnov to support these separatists and so on. And Trump did nothing to stop this war. Here I have to disagree. In February of that year, Trump was, again, look, Trump was the first president who, after the 2020 elections took place, did not officially recognize their results. He was the first president, or one of the few American presidents, who showed unsportsmanlike behavior. Basically, in sports, if an athlete doesn't acknowledge the result, they get disqualified and are removed from the competition. Trump neither recognized his opponent's win nor attended the inauguration. This is unsportsmanlike behavior. It's wrong.
They don't hear, but only certain people.
Leon, I think, turned off his headphones and things got messy. Unfortunately.
I have to do this. I'll explain the technical side later.
Okay.
I also have my own little problem here, Dasha.
Okay. So, and most importantly, I believe that Trump is destroying, about NATO, you were right about everything regarding finances. He really did secure funding, but he destroyed NATO as an organization, because NATO is an organization built on mutual trust between partners, and he killed that trust. So he started talking about money and forgot the principles for which NATO exists.
We can't talk. We can't hear anything. What are we going to do?
I don't know.
What this is. So since Sergey made his comments about what Leon said, I suggest we do it this way. By the way, since our debate is going a little differently now with sound or lighting or something else going on, I want to ask Sergey a quick question. You just said that Trump didn't do anything at some point. I wanted to ask you, could he have?
Well, probably he could have as the president, yes. I didn't say he did nothing. I said he did nothing regarding the war in Ukraine, which had been going on since 2014. So on this specific issue, I absolutely did not say that he did nothing.
That's what I meant. Leon, your question about what Sergey said.
All right. Well, let me make some brief comments first, then I'll smoothly move on to the question, and then we'll proceed from there. I'll try to reconnect after I say this because I also have a bit of an issue here. Today, we're just surrounded by problems. So, Sergey, well, in any case, I'll always take 94% agreement no matter what. Although, actually, the agreement is 100% because I probably didn't express myself correctly. Maybe he didn't do something, but the full-scale fighting hadn't started while he was there. Trump didn't perceive the war between Ukraine and Russia as our American war that he should intervene in, at least until the full-scale fighting actually began. Well, in general, it's just semantics. So let's, so to speak, move on. Honestly, from your objection, I didn't understand why this proves that he's a spy if he did everything I mentioned. Well, all right. So, as for what Musayev or Omelchenko said, I apologize, but those are not the people I would trust. So, Sergey, I watched several of your videos, both monologues and interviews, and a few of them surprised me. In one video, for example, you said the following. This happened after Trump's phone conversation with Putin, when Putin said he needed 2 months to finish off Ukraine. So, you know that Putin, this is a 100% quote from you. I need 2 months to finish off Ukraine. If needed, I'll send a link to that video later. So how do you know that he said this in the conversation? Was it again someone like Musayev or Omelchenko who reported this to the world? They weren't even present. Now, 10 days after that, remember, 2 months, right? 10 days after that, Trump said he gives Putin 50 days. Well, if you add 10 plus 50, you get 60. It all adds up. So based on this, here's the conclusion. This was a collusion between Putin and Trump. That's your quote again. And everyone in America understood that he's working for Putin again. I emphasize the word again because you emphasized it as well. So not only did we understand that he's working, we understood that everyone in America realized that he's working again. And then you added that even the Republicans started mocking Trump for giving Putin carte blanche, for letting him kill Ukrainians for 50 days. Wow. You claim that the call between Trump and Putin, which you personally didn't hear, and maybe didn't read the transcript, because I don't really understand why you would be given the transcript to read, proves collusion because Trump gave Putin 50 days, 10 days later. And my question is something like this. Where exactly in the public materials is it written that Putin and Trump agreed that Trump would give Putin 2 months so that Putin could kill enough Ukrainians during this time and end the war?
Well, let me answer your question. When you talk about General Musayev and General Amelchenko saying that they are not an authority for you, then all the more so. In the conversation about whether Trump was recruited by the State Security Committee, whether any intelligence or counterintelligence agencies worked with him, I have a question for you then. And who are you, so to speak, to judge these people who have been professionally engaged in leadership work in the field of intelligence and counterintelligence for many years? So you said you were once a senior extraordinary officer, right?
And how many senior extraordinary? I didn't reach that rank. I'm a person who has been involved in propaganda my whole life, and I understand perfectly well how it works. A person wants money, and he puts it out there as advertising. He says, I know that someone was recruited while I was there. There's no basis for it, no documents, it's complete lies, but he gets paid for it. It's not that someone is directly paying him, but he gets money just for clicks or something like that. Well, look, even when you say this, a lot of people click on your content too, right? So you have a direct, I'm not saying it's just you, I have it too, right? So everyone has a strong desire to attract a lot of attention to themselves because it gives certain privileges, rights, and income. So both Mr. Musayev and Mr. Omachenko, from my point of view, the fact that they worked in the KGB means that they are professional liars and scoundrels. And now you are telling me that we should trust professional liars and scoundrels. Stop it. What are you talking about? Well,
You just said yourself that you spent your whole life doing propaganda. And propaganda, in my opinion, is just as nasty a business as the KGB, if not worse.
that's your point of view, right?
That's my point of view, yes. And also from the point of view of people who study. No,
That's not true. You don't know other people's points of view. You can only speak about your own point of view.
let's see this through to the end, so to speak, step by step. Yes, because you were not just engaged in propaganda. You were engaged in Soviet propaganda.
Never in my life. I'm keeping quiet for now, and then I'll speak. You said,
You spent your life doing propaganda.
I worked in the theater and directed plays. A play is one form of propaganda. You're trying to convince people of your own point of view. Then I worked on the radio, on television, and then I wrote a lot. I appeared on a huge number of television, radio, and similar programs. I was constantly trying to persuade people of something. Look up the word propaganda. Check exactly what it means in an explanatory dictionary.
Everything is clear. And one last thing, your theater, your radio, and your television was Soviet.
I've never worked in the Soviet Union.
Well then just tell us a few words about yourself, like I did about myself.
Thank you. Well, you see, I'll tell everyone everything anyway. Yes, I left the Soviet Union in 1973. I worked at the Len Film Studio and had just finished my directing studies. After that, I organized a theater in Israel. After that, I was invited to the United States of America to direct a play. I worked on radio and television in Israel and in the United States of America. Well, let's put it that way. One interesting role I had was serving on the Central Committee of the Libertarian Party of the United States of America. I wrote a number of books on economics. They were published in English, recently translated into Russian, and are now being sold on various platforms. And on the day when Trump delivered his inaugural speech, I decided to switch from English to Russian. I had never done anything in Russian in my life before, always in Hebrew or usually in English. And in Hebrew, I wrote plays. In Hebrew, I wrote books, stories, and so on. So on the day of his inauguration, I just decided to explain to my fellow countrymen what they didn't understand about what he said. Well, actually, my message, which I sent to 20 people, was read by Cut Rust and viewed by 100,000 people. And I realized that there was real demand in this area. And so to speak, a whole group of people who later started saying something on the internet came to me and said, teach us. There was the same Yura Tabak, the same Tal Ivan, and so to speak, a whole group of other people to whom I showed the way. And now I started working on my channel professionally exactly a year ago. Before that, I would speak when I wanted, not speak when I didn't want to, say what I wanted, release episodes that also aired on TV, and so on. In other words, I am a professional propagandist. That doesn't mean I'm spreading propaganda, Soviet or any other kind.
Окей,
Not
просто
true. I have my own propaganda. I have, let's say, a person who lived in the 1st century BC, 100 years before Jesus Christ, named Ram Gaili. So I am a follower of his teachings, and so to speak, I promote his teachings.
I see one last question from my side regarding what we've discussed. Trump did not acknowledge Biden's victory and did not attend the inauguration. Do you think this is sportsmanlike behavior? Is this the behavior of a president?
It's absolutely normal. There was blatant fraud. We all know that. We all know that he was winning at 3 in the morning and how it happened. And suddenly at 3 in the morning in 5 places, the very ones where something was supposed to happen, where something could possibly be done, they suddenly stopped counting for 2 hours. And after 2 hours, there were bags of ballots there where nothing was marked except for president, because there were 32 other items to be marked. Only one item, president, and all of them were for Biden. Based on this, Biden won in 5 districts, which made the difference. Of course, I didn't go any higher after that.
Leon, I'm sorry, guys. Serioja. If you have any comments, go ahead. Alen, if you said you would reconnect because they're saying it's hard to hear you, something's wrong with the sound, maybe not. If it's convenient for you, we can stay as we are. If not, we'll do something about it.
Give me 2 minutes. I'll join from another device.
Agreed. Sergey, I just thought about how when these debates were being planned, there had to be a main disagreement. There must always be some kind of disagreement between the debaters, meaning the guests. And if before Leon joined, if I had asked you, Sergey, what do you think is the main disagreement between you and Leon Weinstein?
Thank you. Our main disagreement is that we look at the consequences of what Trump is doing for American society and for the whole world differently. That is, in terms of the facts, we probably agree, as I said, about 94%. But when it comes to the consequences and the assessment of what Trump is doing, we differ radically. Because as far as I understand, Leon still, well, so to speak, for him, Trump is something of an idol. That's how I hear it, at least, yes. That's it. And I see it completely differently because from my point of view, Trump is a person who is extremely dangerous to the whole world and to America, and who is destroying America from within. Because Leon told us, well, we probably won't discuss it without him, of course. We need to ask him questions. That's it. And, well, besides the fact that I absolutely don't understand how Americans could elect as president a person who was convicted by an American court on 34 counts. That's what's shocking to me, that Americans elected such a president.
Well, it's interesting. If Leon comes back, I'd like to ask him this question and then we can continue. But I have some doubts about our sound because I hear that background noise again. Or then, Dennis, you lead these debates so I don't interfere if it's somehow related to me as well. For now, I wanted to say, Sergey, you know...
Let's try now. We're connecting Leon now, yes.
Can you hear me, Sergey? Leon, is it clear now?
Well, I can hear everything fine. I'm on the computer now, not on the phone.
I can hear you well. Let's go. I can definitely hear you.
Now everything is finally working, thank God. Where did we leave off? I interrupted you, Sergey, when you started to comment on what Leon was saying.
Well, you asked me what our difference in approach to Trump is. I told you that in terms of facts, we practically have no difference because of the facts that Leon mentioned. Well, the only thing you can really argue about is the economy, of course, because when the president changes every 4 years to say that the economy didn't work before him, and then he came and suddenly the economy started working. For me, as someone who also has an economic education, I do have a degree as an international economist from MGIMO. For me, that's not entirely correct because the economy is a process. And if we look at the economy under Biden, it wasn't a failure. In the economy, it often works like this. Certain processes are set in motion under one president, and the next president gets the benefits from the economic policies that the previous president implemented. That's it. That's the only thing, just some caveats, right? Because if you look, for example, at the price of gasoline in America over the last 30 years, you'll see that it actually fluctuated under all presidents, dropping during some periods and rising during others. And to say that, for example, under the Democrats, it was always high, and under Trump, it was always low, that's economic nonsense. That's absolutely not true. Well, regarding the last remark, maybe from Leona, who talked about the elections were recognized as having taken place in the United States of America. No one challenged them, and if anyone did, the Supreme Court made its decision. If the elections are recognized by the Supreme Court, then continuing to dispute these elections is a violation of the basic rules of living in a civilized society. Because it's just like if you were in the ring and after the fight you kept saying, but I had this and that happened to me. You have a sports tribunal, you can make your claims about this fight, but if the tribunal has made a decision, then you no longer have the right to dispute it. You are forced to accept it. If you don't accept it, then there's no point in participating in sports or in politics.
Thank you, Sergey. Leon.
Well, look, let's remember Hillary Clinton, who claimed that it was Russia that stole the election from her and still says that, so to speak, if it weren't for Russia, she would have won. Well, okay, but that doesn't actually prove that he's a spy, right? I have one more, so to speak. I have two more questions. You said 3 questions, but I see that we're already running out of time, right? Here's another video. Sergey, you said that Trump has, well, lost his mind. I guess you meant his head. And then you said that Trump, and you personally said, is Putin's agent, a KGB agent. This person, well, Trump, as you said, who works together with the Russian Federation. So this is, well, quite a serious accusation coming from you personally. Now, but then you said that he doesn't lift the sanctions on Russia, that he adds new sanctions on Russia, that he provided weapons to Ukraine because he sells American weapons to be used in Ukraine. After the U.S. gave Ukraine, well, the number is debatable, but somewhere around $175 billion for free, and now, having given these $175 billion, this son of a bitch wants to start getting compensation. Now, since we ourselves, so to speak, you yourself are a KGB officer, you probably knew how KGB agents behave. It's interesting. What kind of KGB agent imposes sanctions on his handler and arms his handler's enemy? An agent of influence, judging by what you're saying, acts against the interests of his master. So, during Trump's time, more than 270 so-called sanctions designations were imposed against individuals and entities connected to Russia. I don't know if KGB agents behave like that. So, Western banks were prohibited from financing energy and industrial companies working with Russia. Sanctions were imposed on 7 major oligarchs. The markets reacted strongly, causing several Russian companies' capitalization to plummet. Well, I don't know if that's how KGB agents behave. I never served in the KGB. Sanctions against Nord Stream 2, as you mentioned yourself, and the companies involved. Russia lost billions, and without Biden, it wouldn't have recovered. Ukraine received lethal weapons. Russia suffered multi-billion-dollar damage. Project funding has been stopped. Is it possible that Trump misunderstood his assignment very badly? Is it possible that Trump is a bad KGB agent? And I have a question. You've often said he's Agent Krasnov. So how do you know for sure, not just from the words of 2 people who, well, maybe we can imagine, after thinking that they did it for some reason, right? So how do you know that Trump was given the codename Agent Krasnov? Or is this just your imagination again?
This isn't my imagination. This is an on-air performance, just like you performed with your theaters there and so on. When you perform in the theater, you use various ways to attract attention, including shocking the audience. And one of the ways to attract people's attention, to make them stay and listen to you, to listen to what you're saying, is to shock the audience. It's not necessarily lying. It's just a technique. These are techniques to make people stay. You say, how can he be an agent if he doesn't act like one? Well, first of all, that's just your impression of what an agent is. Because let's agree, you've never worked in counterintelligence. You've never worked in intelligence, right? And that's why when intelligence recruits someone, they don't need a person who will go out in front of the White House with a red communist flag and say, I want communism to come to the United States of America. When intelligence recruits an agent, they want that agent to become the president of the United States. And in order for him to become the president of the United States, this agent can criticize the Soviet Union. He can do anything to show that he is an enemy of the Soviet Union because he needs to be promoted to that position. Let me give you a simple example. Do you remember Kim Philby? Wonderful. an English aristocrat who believed in communism, but at that time, so to speak, there was fascism in Europe, and in general, quite a lot of people, including decent people, simply became communists so as not to be fascists. Well, all right, even if he did believe in it. So when the NKVD recruited him, the first thing they told him was that he needed to forget all those communist slogans he used to proclaim when he was a student, when he was at Oxford, and so on and so forth. And then he had to become anti-Soviet, anti-communist. And for that, he was sent to Spain. He was sent to work as a journalist for a bourgeois newspaper and to cover the events in Spain in the 1930s from Franco's side. And he was even awarded a Francoist order because he came under fire there, survived, and Franco personally awarded him a rather high military order. The same thing happened with Sergey, who was in the Comintern, who was in the Soviet Union, who was a propagandist and wrote communist articles in Soviet magazines and newspapers. And when it was necessary to make him an illegal agent and an illegal intelligence officer, to send him to Japan, he was first sent to Germany, where he joined the fascist party, the NSDAP, and then from there, having already joined this party and written several fascist and Nazi newspaper articles, he then went to Japan and acted there as a fascist. He didn't walk around there with a red banner, shouting, "Give us Stalin," and so on. That is, in order to advance an agent in the right direction, he needs to become bourgeois. I also had a similar experience in my work as an operative. I came to France, we had a public debate with some kind of communist audience, and some teenager there said, "I would like to serve in the KGB." I told him, if you want to serve in the KGB, you shouldn't ask such questions in front of 40 people. And then in private, I told him, if you really want to serve in the KGB, the first thing you need to do is leave the Communist Youth Union of France and join some right-wing party, because otherwise you'll never get an interesting position that the KGB needs. And if you look at Trump in 1987 in July, during his trip, before that trip, he was just a businessman who was minding his own business, writing some books, doing television and so on. But when he returned from the Soviet Union, the first thing he did was buy full-page ads in 3 major newspapers with his own money and published some things there that practically broadcasted the interests of the Soviet Union in those newspapers. Then he was invited to debates with Oprah Winfrey and to debates with Larry King. And he started promoting some things that were partially beneficial to the Soviet Union. Specifically, he was saying, why are we feeding this NATO? Why isn't it paying money? So basically, he started saying everything that he's saying now. So when a Soviet agent is recruited by intelligence, he's not recruited to walk around with a red flag, but to become the president of the United States and then do things that benefit the country that recruited him. It's very similar with Trump. Later, when I say now that he's working almost like an agent of Putin, it's based on what he's actually doing. Because if you look right now, there's a war in Iran, Trump is fighting in Iran, and Putin, on the other hand, is helping Iran kill American soldiers, passing intelligence about American bases, and so on and so forth. Trump hasn't said anything about this even once. Putin congratulated Ayatollah. Well, I mean, he expressed his condolences to Ayatollah's son regarding the killing of the previous Ayatollah. And he said that your country is currently under foreign aggression. We are with you. Friendship between Russia and Iran is forever. Trump didn't say anything about this, although before he said, Putin is my friend, we get along great, everything is going perfectly for us and so on. I can answer at length because you asked specific questions about these 50 days. It all looked like someone who works for Putin was giving him an opportunity. Look, he came to the White House, he wrote a book, Искусство вести, The Art of the Deal. According to this book, he was supposed to pressure Putin to get something from him. On February 12 last year, Trump calls Putin and immediately gives him everything. He doesn't try to put any pressure at all. He immediately gives everything to Putin, says, take whatever you want, take all of Ukraine, make any deals. I'll put pressure on Zelensky and so on. In other words, he acts like someone who works for Putin. He acts like someone who works for Putin. And if you look at these geopolitical results, as I told you, if he were an agent, he wouldn't behave any differently. Thank you, Sergey. Leon.
Yes, well, from all this, I understood the following. In order to prove that you are a spy, you have to do everything so that the one you work for suffers. I understand. Well, all right. Then that means I have one last question. But as you said, there's shock value in similar things. Yes, in the US, the law provides, well, a huge difference between saying, I think that, or it seems like, and stating that Trump is a KGB agent. The latter is a statement of fact. In the US, that's grounds for a defamation lawsuit. For example, in 2024, Rudy Giuliani paid $148 million to two poll workers in Georgia whom he publicly accused of fraud. He didn't say that he thought they committed fraud. He didn't say that someone told him they committed fraud. He said that they committed fraud. He paid for it. In your case, publicly, on camera, you say that Trump is a KGB agent, Trump is Putin's agent. He does everything that Putin needs. I don't suspect it, I know. This is what's called classic defamation per se in American law. I suspect it's the same in France, too. This is an accusation that an official is working for a foreign intelligence service, which is a criminal offense here. Today, you actually repeated it. But, so to speak, today you said it a little differently, and you said that it seems like he is working. So, he works for the Russian Federation. It seems like he is working and he is working are two very different things. Besides that, you said the following things. You said, in the best case, Trump is an idiot. In the worst case, he's a sellout bastard. There. You stated that everyone in America understood that he is once again working on Putin's side. And besides that, you said that we've all already realized that the KGB handler is Putin and Trump is Agent Krasnov. There. After that, you explained that if something looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. So they say Trump seems like an agent of influence, but what does one even look like? Let's say you look like an agent of influence. Does Melchenko look like one? What about Musayev? Does he look like one? I don't really understand. They look like agents of influence, so why should we believe them and not, let's say, someone else?
You selectively listen to what I say. You listen to what I say very selectively, and you try to use it to your advantage very skillfully. Because I started my speech by asking you, is Trump Agent Krasnov? I would say that as a former KGB officer, I have not seen his personal file as an agent, and therefore I cannot say that he is a KGB agent. I can only, so to speak, talk about it, reflect on this topic, analyze his behavior, analyze the statements of colleagues who accuse him. So General Musayev said this, so to speak, all the accusations you made against me should be made against General Musayev, not me. Because he said that he knows for sure that Trump was recruited in '87 and that his code name is Agent Krasnov. Next, we speculate about what General Musayev said. We analyze what General Musayev said. And then we use a bit of, so to speak, shock value to attract the audience. Everything will be there in writing in my book. So, and of course, when a book is published and everything is there in writing, you can read everything in French, ask someone to translate it. It will be released on December 28th. And you will see my exact wording, how I evaluate it, what I evaluate, where I evaluate, what I analyze.
Well, congratulations on the book. Congratulations in French. Very nice, and so on. But before, there was only the printed word, and now there's the internet, and that's why the internet keeps everything. The thing is, what you said earlier today was said for the American-Canadian audience, which, as you suspected, is naturally not entirely sure that Trump is a spy. But many times you said, Trump is a KGB agent. That's your own claim. Trump is Putin's agent, from yourself. He does everything that Putin needs. That's also your own claim. Well, okay, we've already moved on. We already understand that you don't know this. We understand that you base your statements on the words of several KGB agents. They say they're former, but who knows, right? And in fact, you don't have any knowledge of your own. What you said for shock value, as you mentioned, so that people would listen to you more. Unfortunately, you are a charming person, so to speak. Someone who knows how to talk, speaks well, and that's why you're invited to different channels that a lot of people watch. And so when you're on Gordon's channel, which I think has 6 million subscribers, right? And 200,000 to 300,000 people watch each episode, maybe even more, you say, Trump is a KGB agent. And you use your skills, intelligence, and charm. Trump obeys and does everything Putin wants. You don't say, Amalchenko said it, so I think he's right. You speak for yourself. And that's what really outrages me, because without any grounds except your guesses, you accuse a person of something that, from my point of view, is absolutely prosecutable.
Okay, well, fine. I heard your point of view. I heard your complaints. Yes, for Americans, maybe, yes, really, it's important to say every time, it seems to me, from my point of view, this is my analysis. I don't give news on my channel. On my channel, I analyze what's happening. On my channel, I process the information that is available. That is, this is not my information, but information from other sources, because I have lived in France for 25 years. And therefore, when it comes to commenting on what is happening in the Russian Federation, I can only speak based on the words of people who are there. After that, I give my own assessment. I give the same kind of assessment to geopolitical events. By the way, you didn't answer my questions about the destruction of American institutions by Trump.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer. Sasha, I'm just not sure I had the time because it's already 9:07 our time.
Yes, but we started much later. There's still time. I want to ask. Now, after Leon answers your questions, Sergey, with your permission, there will be questions from the viewers who have already sent them in. I would like to have time to ask them if we have the opportunity.
Well, we still have about 7 minutes, so we can go up to 15 minutes.
All right, Leon.
Let me try to fit this into literally 3 minutes because honestly, from my point of view, this isn't a complicated question. So the destruction of institutions, the fact is that 230 years ago, the United States of America began as what is called a democratic republic with certain laws, rules, and understandings. During these 230 years, the bureaucracy, excuse me for saying so, I left at a very young age, so I don't always put the emphasis exactly where it should be. The bureaucracy has changed a lot in the United States of America and led to a situation where it was possible to elect a person who was not actually a leader of the country, who didn't understand anything, who didn't know which way to turn, left or right. You could contest the elections, you could do a lot of things. I won't list them all right now. And from my point of view, a lot of this needs to be cleaned up. Now, what is Trump doing? During Trump's first term, a huge number of rules that had been introduced were eliminated. That is, the rules that were introduced later after the Republic was established. He is carefully trying to return America to the structure that was originally intended. For example, before 1912, the United States of America didn't take any money from anyone's salary. They didn't rob anyone. They didn't steal from anyone. In 1912, they decided to start doing this. Starting from 1913, they increased it. And today, so to speak, you can give away 70 to 80% of what you earn to the government. Why? Because they just want money. So a lot of this Trump wants to bring back. So this isn't about destroying American institutions. It's an attempt to dismantle the institutions that were created, let's say, by Roosevelt, right? One of the most destructive presidents is considered a hero of the United States of America. One of the most nightmarish presidents in the history of the United States of America, because we still feel the consequences. He believed in and enacted such laws. For example, Hitler enacted laws from Duce Mussolini in his own way. And he enacted laws in his own way, Duce Mussolini, and said that Duce Mussolini was the best economist in the world, and he was trying to make America follow the same principles. So that's why we have a lot of things that need to be destroyed. If you're talking about destroying NATO, well, my God, it needs to be completely restructured. What does it mean that one country provides the shield and the sword for everyone else, while all the others live off of it? Germany pays 1%. They paid 1% of their GDP, while we paid 3.54%. Why? Why should we protect them? If they don't fulfill their obligations to contribute money to our collective defense, then we won't fulfill our obligations to protect them. Now the UN. Yes, 20 years before Trump, I was saying that it should be torn down, evicted, destroyed, because there is nothing worse than the UN. UNESCO, the Paris Agreement. Well, these are some kind of socialist and globalist nightmares. We don't want this. We are individualists. Those in the US, the best people left Europe. The best means the most adventurous, the boldest. Where did they go? They went to Australia. When exiled, they went to America and Israel. And these three countries, Australia is no longer in the game, unfortunately, so only two are left. These three countries today produce 80%, even 90% of everything the world produces. New discoveries, new devices, new gadgets, everything new. Everything is invented in two countries. Why? Because the young, energetic blood has gone to these two countries. And today we are shackled by the liberalism and socialism that our officials have established here over the past 220 years. Bureaucracy in Russian nomenclatura. That's what we're destroying.
Thank you. Yes, Sergey, excuse me.
We have a very interesting debate, but there's no time to respond to everything because, unfortunately, we're limited. It seems to me that, by the way, you're confusing the word liberalism because liberalism is actually what you want, but you use it as a derogatory term because I want it.
I apologize. I want classical liberalism. That's what I just said. Liberalism in the way it's applied now. Yes, I'm a liberal. But if I say that I'm a liberal, everyone will think I'm a communist.
They won't think you're a communist because I'm a liberal too, but in the classical sense of liberalism. By the way, did you attack President Roosevelt? And you didn't say that it's your opinion that he's the worst president or one of the worst.
One of the worst.
I didn't. Sergey, may I? I really want to. I picked a couple of questions. There are a lot of them, but I picked, will I have time to ask you one? Just one? Yes?
One remark about NATO, because you've already mentioned it twice. Leon, you're a smart person, so let's not pretend. The United States of America colonized Europe after 1945. They colonized Europe and Japan. They forced Germany to give up everything it had before, and they forced Japan to give up everything it had before. And they said, we will govern you, but you will be under our umbrella. The United States of America forced Europe to accept American money as a result of the Marshall Plan. And until recently, I think Europe paid off the last loans to them in 2017. There you go. So acting as if the United States were some kind of exploited country. The USA did everything on purpose so that these countries would remain like children under the care of an adult, which was the USA. That's why it was a deliberate policy of the United States, so that NATO would be completely subordinate to them, so that Europe would be completely subordinate to them, and Japan would be completely subordinate as well. This is important.
These are your assumptions, right?
I understand. Now, the question, Seryoja, I picked the ones that are, well, not provocative, but still. A question for Sergey. There's a saying that once you become a KGB officer, you remain one for life. How can we be sure that you, Sergey Zhirnov, are not carrying out assignments for the Committee for State Security while on a business trip abroad today?
There's no way to be sure. Absolutely no way. Because that's just espionage. That's the difference. Nothing can be proven. By the way, the only thing I managed to prove was that I was there, because even that can be hard to prove, that I have a diploma, that I studied there, and so on. But actually, that common phrase that, so to speak, once you get into the KGB, you stay there for life, it's partially true and partially not true. Everything I was taught, of course, is still in my head. It won't go anywhere, and nothing will change that. You probably need to read my autobiographical book to understand what kind of KGB officer I was. Because I was a dissident inside the KGB, and it's completely clear why they've now declared me a foreign agent. And why in 2001 I had to leave, because otherwise they would have put me in prison. The most important thing is that when you leave the huge machine that's behind you, you lose that connection with the machine. Because you can't engage in criminal activity unless there's some kind of state and that machine behind you. And when you've simply left it, you've retired, you've resigned, and so on, that machine is no longer there.
That machine is no longer there, Seryoja, but today one of those machines declared you a foreign agent, didn't it?
No, I don't have a machine. There's nothing behind me.
The machine didn't fall apart.
Moreover, it got even bigger because Putin revived it and so on. Now it's just pressing on me. Now it's accusing me of being a traitor and a spy.
I'll definitely ask you next time when Sergey comes here what it's like to be, I don't have time now, what it's like to be a dissident within the KGB. Seryoja, I've never heard anything like that. Alan, a quick question for you.
Very briefly, I have to tell you that the KGB intelligence service was considered a dissident organization because intelligence officers had to work abroad. And in order to recruit foreign spies, you had to not be Soviet. Basically, if you only repeat Soviet slogans, no one will come to you. That's why you had to become a foreigner. You had to become a bourgeois. And the people who worked in intelligence, by the way, that's why there were so many traitors from intelligence. You could count about 100 of them. It was the only agency where traitors escaped from.
Aha, very interesting. Now, a question for Leon and a quick question for both of you. Leon, I have an issue with you. You have said many times that you have two citizenships, one American and the other Israeli. How can we be sure that everything you say is not for the benefit of Israel, but for the benefit of the United States of America? I mean, you are Israeli.
I will repeat, Sergey, of course, there is no way to be sure, not at all. Look, when I came to the District Komsomol Committee in 1973 so that, so to speak, I would be declared an enemy of the motherland, you definitely had to get some kind of stamp from them. They interviewed us. There were 3 people sitting there. They asked me something. One of them, well, usually they were not very smart in the district committees, so the first and second, let's say, like the secretary, were not dumb, but the rest were usually not very smart. And he says to me, so one of them says, "Tell me you're going to Israel, right?" I say, "Well, yes. So you know they'll take you into the army there, right?" I say, "I know." He says, "And you'll be standing there in uniform, maybe even on the border." I say, "Well, maybe." He says, "So just imagine you're at the border, and on the other side of the border, a Soviet soldier with an assault rifle appears. What do you do?" Well, he thought he could throw me off at that moment. I say, "Can I clarify something?" He says, "Go ahead." I say, "So I'm at the border, I'm an Israeli soldier, I'm in uniform with a rifle, and a Russian soldier appears at the border. What am I going to do?" "Yes, I say, "Shoot." I was immediately expelled from the Komsomol, so I apologize. So I really hope that I won't have to shoot if Israel starts fighting with America, because here I'm completely confused about what to do.
Thank you, Leon. And the last question, Seryoja, and this question is for you, Leon, and for Sergey. A question for both of you. What does Ukraine's victory in the war mean from your point of view? And how can Ukraine achieve this victory on its own without the help of other countries? Please give the percentage. What are Ukraine's chances of defeating Russia? So who would like to go first?
I'll go first if needed, since Sergey has always gone first. So, to defeat Russia without the help of Martians, Americans, or Chinese, yes, I think it's possible. Well, you can't say there's absolutely no chance. Maybe it's 99% unlikely. There's always a chance that something like an earthquake happens, or something else. Maybe a coup in Moscow. And then, so to speak, the Russian troops would flee, yes. If we set that aside, then in my opinion, to win, And today, Ukrainians say that victory means completely clearing the territory of Ukraine itself and Crimea from Russian troops. That is what victory is. Zelensky announced this again 2 days ago. They have no chance of winning like that, except for what I just mentioned. Now, what does it mean to stop the war, to survive, so to speak? It means to negotiate through America with Russia about establishing a demarcation line, part of Ukraine's territory, maybe even giving up areas that Russia hasn't captured yet but will capture in a year and a half or two. Unfortunately, because no one will give Ukraine weapons, no one will go there to fight instead of Ukrainians. So Ukraine has to survive. This is the Finnish option. I personally lived near Leningrad. We had what you would call a dacha on the Karelian Isthmus, which used to belong to Finland. So I think that as of now, this is the best option. Preserve the people and the culture, and then in 10, 20, 30 years, everything will change.
Thank you, Sergey.
It's a difficult question, actually. I think that, by the way, defeating Russia militarily is actually easier than we think. Because Russia, which wanted to conquer Ukraine in 3 days, has already been fighting for 5 years, and it needed help from Iran and North Korea. And if there is no help from Iran, North Korea, and China, then Russia by itself perhaps could even be defeated militarily. But as long as Putin is alive, there will be no victory. That's the first thing. And on the other hand, it seems to me that as long as Trump is in the White House, there will also be no victory because Trump does not recognize international law. So how can you sign anything if America, even under Obama and Biden, violated the Budapest Memorandum? And when Trump came to the White House, he said, everything you signed with Biden on behalf of the United States of America, I do not consider an obligation of my country, which from a legal point of view may even be considered a crime by the United States, because the president signs on behalf of the American people and the signature is that of a specific president, but the obligation is for the country. And Trump says, everything that was signed before me doesn't count for me. So in fact, he is breaking the whole system. When the system is broken, by the way, that's what I was talking about. He doesn't recognize the system of values, the system of checks and balances, or the system of law. And if there is no system of law, meaning if you don't recognize your opponent's victory, then everything else becomes meaningless, because whatever you sign won't work.
Thank you, Sergey. And let's just take a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Seryoja, your thoughts, please.
I'm already 10 minutes late for my job.
Sergey, well then, thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you. Thank you to Leon. Leon, any comments or anything about what happened today?
Well, it's not really fair, so to speak, to let me give comments when Sergey doesn't have time for them. But let me say one thing. Sergey, in America, it's impossible to just not fulfill an agreement that was signed by the previous president and approved, let's say, by Congress. The president can't just not do it. So you're mistaken about something. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I think you're mistaken. Maybe there was a promise, but no agreement.
I'm talking about the 10-year security agreement that Zelensky signed last year with Biden on behalf of the United States of America.
Security for 10 years. I don't even know about that at all.
Ukraine has signed such agreements with 30 countries, including the United States of America.
Honestly, I have no idea. I mean, as far as I know, I haven't seen anything about this in the American press. Okay, maybe I missed something, but at the very least, the president simply cannot unilaterally cancel any agreement signed by the previous president. He just can't.
Well, take a look.
Sergey, how's Paris?
Paris is wonderful. The weather is great. It's summer here. It was a shock for me because I just came back from the Alps. There's still 1.5 meters of snow in the Alps. And here I just found myself in summer. It's both a temperature shock and a visual one, but a very pleasant one.
Seryoja, do you speak Arabic? They're asking. I won't say anything anymore.
I don't speak Arabic.
This is necessary, Seryoja.
Is this necessary in Paris?
That's what it's for. I can teach you a couple of words, but the Arabs won't like them.
Sergey, thank you so much. Sorry for keeping you. Thank you so much for coming and agreeing. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. If Leon is still here, I'd have some questions for Leon another day.
Leon is with us. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Leon, do we have 15 more minutes?
Yes, we do, of course.
I want to ask you about something. Well, first of all, I won't ask about the debates right now because Sergey isn't here. Of course. Thank you so much for agreeing. And Seryoja agreed. I think it worked out. It worked out. What's happening today? Ask Leon. It's not about the debates. It's about something else. So what really happened from yesterday to today? They mean the war in Iran. What kind of truce is this? About the ensembles? There is no truce. They're bombing Hadisbal. How likely is it that these 2 weeks will be quiet? And is this silence even necessary?
You know, well, the first thing I have to say is that I haven't figured it out myself yet. So, well, let's say I've figured some things out, but not everything, so I don't have the full picture yet. Second, from my point of view, it was expected that Trump would extend this deadline, also because there was frantic work going on, literally, so to speak. Vance wasn't sleeping at night, and neither was their parliament chairman. I can't remember his last name right now because they were constantly in touch, as I understand it, directly, but they all pretend that it's through Pakistan. But I suspect that they were also in direct contact. So what actually happened? A few hours before the so-called deadline, and the deadline was yesterday at 8 p.m., Tuesday at 8 p.m., Trump released a tweet which was strikingly unlike anything Trump would say or anything any previous president of the United States had ever said. In other words, it was complete nonsense, so this tweet caused an uproar in both the American and international press. First of all, it said that tomorrow, meaning starting at 8 p.m., I will begin the destruction of civilization on the territory of Iran, which shocked everyone. Does he mean a nuclear bomb? Then he used foul language in the middle of it, which Trump never does. He can joke or yell at someone, but seeing something like that officially in a tweet or document, no. And he finished it, praise Allah. So what do you mean? What? Therefore, several Democrats immediately filed a petition in Congress to start an investigation into Trump's sanity. Trump is absolutely sane, as he proved by speaking several times after that. So this tweet was made for a reason. It caused an absolute storm all over the world. Now, all of this wasn't done for the world. It was done for those people who are in Iran. They constantly want to know whether he's bluffing or not. He postpones something, changes things, says, I'll bomb you, I won't bomb you, and so on. So it felt like Trump was a second Obama, just maybe a bit sadder, right? Who used to say, if you cross this line, and then they would cross it. If you cross the next line, they would cross it again. And nothing happened, right? So Trump tried to show them that he was reckless, that he acts differently, thinks differently than other presidents, and that he will do it. After all, why did the war start? So, at what point and why? Because the negotiators kept negotiating, everything was going well, they were already making progress, almost there. And suddenly, in typical Iranian fashion, at the very last moment, they say, actually, we've decided that we need to start all over again because this doesn't suit us. In other words, months of effort are wasted again. And Vitkov came back and said, they're not going to sign anything. They just want to stall for time. They don't believe we'll strike them. And then they were struck. Yesterday, Trump showed them once again that he's reckless and he'll do things that no other president of the United States has done. He doesn't act like they do. He speaks out, and moreover, so to speak, he said to the people, I'm not against the people, thank Allah, but I'm against the rulers. So it became clear that this reckless madman might strike. Therefore, from Iran, up to 5 minutes before, so to speak, the deadline of 8 p.m. and before Trump appeared, let's say, on the screens, and so to speak, they didn't do anything, so we moved forward. A message came from Pakistan saying that they had a proposal. And, well, a few days before that, they presented a certain 10-point plan, of which 7 points were complete nonsense, absolute rubbish. They're like, America withdraws from the whole world. America removes all its bases, things like that. But 3 of them, let's say, were ones you could actually start doing something about. Trump, as a negotiator who also really doesn't want to start bombing reservoirs and water desalination plants, said, okay, since they're offering something, let's try to work with that. Pakistan offered a 2-week truce, so let's do a 2-week truce. Israel responded to this and said, so to speak, at Trump's request, we won't bomb Iran, but this won't apply to Hezbollah and Lebanon. That means because in that proposal it was written that everyone stops bombing on all fronts. So Israel won't bomb Iran for 2 weeks. Now today, I think they'll be watching because Trump said he would wait there for 24 hours for the ships to pass, for the ships to start passing, with oil there, with fertilizers. And if they go, then there will be a 2-week stop. If they don't go, then, so to speak, resumption and so on. Today we'll be watching, maybe tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to prepare, like raising the sails and lighting the furnaces. If the ships go, then it will stop for 2 weeks, and something will happen during those 2 weeks. If the ships don't go, then everything will resume. But Lebanon is completely separate from Hezbollah, and for Israel now it's even more convenient. There's no need to fly and bomb Iran. You can just go and, as they say, deal with Hezbollah.
Here's a question for you. First, well, you Jews are terrible there. It's written even worse here, but I'll say terrible. You keep violating and bombing Hezbollah, even though you just said it's a completely different story. And second, how is Israeli society reacting to the fact that this war has ended? In my opinion, there is complete disappointment, and people are saying that we ran to the bomb shelters for nothing, just to finish off our enemies.
Well, Israel had a different goal. That is 80% of the goal matched the American one, but 20% did not. Because for the Americans, it's enough to have a non-proliferation agreement signed and the right for the American team to go anywhere, check anything, and so on. That means Israel doesn't have enough of this. Israel would like a regime change, but I'll tell you that, even though I always support the usual Israeli position, just because it's Israeli, simply because I think that for a small nation living there among 300 million enemies, it's the right one. But here, God forbid, if the government falls now like it did in Iraq and chaos begins, it will be significant. It will be much worse than if there is, let's say, a government made up of the cousins of those who ruled before. Because the worst thing that can happen is 93 million people. They break up into warring factions, into bandits, into commanders who now shoot wherever they want, at each other, and so on. That's why I think the Israelis are wrong. God willing, things will settle down there. God willing, what Trump wants to do there will happen.
Yes, it's even written here.
And the Venezuelan version is like this.
Yes, it's complete disappointment and confusion. I'm saying this as an Israeli. Next, how many tanks has Israel already lost in Lebanon? That's a question for you.
The thing is, I don't know, I'm not a military historian. That's a question for other people, for military analysts. How would I know? I know that Israel lives surrounded by enemies. It's a hostile environment organized by Iran and Russia. I know that on one side there's Hamas, on another side there's Hamas, on another side there's Hezbollah, on the third, on the fourth, there's the Iraqi militia, on the fifth, and so on. And all of this is happening around Dima. Iran, with its, so to speak, help and training, plus Russian money and logistics support. So these two states, We can't reach Russia, but we can reach Iran. And of course, we really need to change their policy and finish off everyone who is shooting at our children. Gentlemen, when I was running the children's theater and sending performances to the border, yes, to places like Kiryat Shmona and other locations, we were actually shot at twice while we were gathering. Children performed and plays were held in the theater, but they discovered kids were there and targeted that area. Well, of course, we can't live like this.
About DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, yes, the governor who literally, I think just a couple of days ago, signed a law regarding Sharia. You probably heard about it, right?
Of course.
What does it mean? Why is DeSantis doing this right now? And does DeSantis have a chance to become president of the United States after President Trump finishes his term? No.
DeSantis has no chance. We saw him in one debate. He debated once with the governor of California. At that time, DeSantis had all the advantages, and the governor of California had all the disadvantages, but DeSantis lost the debate. According to all the reviews, he couldn't explain why people are fleeing California for his state by the millions. He couldn't. He couldn't explain why financial corporations from New York are moving to his state. He couldn't explain why, even though his state has almost no income tax, while in New York, I know it's 11% if I'm not mistaken, why is it better to live in his state than there? Well, that means he can't be president. He turned out to be an excellent leader, a very decent person, but by the rules, so to speak. Probably in today's world, he can't win on television. So from my point of view, he's an excellent manager. And if I, so to speak, were thinking about whom to appoint to a position, I would bring him in. Then, let's say if Rubio or Vance become president, they would bring him in as someone quite serious and important in their administration.
Regarding the law about Sharia?
I'll explain. There can't be two laws in the country. There is only one law in the country. Either we need to take Sharia and incorporate it into our law and then accordingly change some of our laws so that it works, or not accept it under any circumstances because Sharia is a code of laws. How can there be two codes of laws in a country? One says, for example, that a woman should be beaten if she cooks a bad dinner, and the other says, God forbid, if there's even a hint of that, it's considered domestic abuse. Which do you follow? One person says, I follow this law, then another tomorrow.
Then why is it only DeSantis who passes such a law and not all the states in America?
Because it's obvious already. Everyone understands it. So can a person, let's say from Iceland, come here and say, I'll live by Icelandic laws here inside this country? I understand.
You're right, but if that's clear, why is DeSantis passing this law? Because
that means there were precedents.
Yeah.
Some mosques said we don't go to the police, we handle things ourselves. How do you handle things yourselves? What does that mean?
Let's continue. Leon, look, there are two topics today that are discussed every day on all the channels. One is the war in the Middle East and what Trump will do, decide, say, or think, and when it will end. The second is the war that hasn't ended yet, Russia and Ukraine. Today, it seems to me that most people's attention is focused more on the Middle East. Does this mean, first of all, what are the chances, as you see it, as an American speaking to another American and at the same time as an Israeli? So the Middle East and the situation in Iran today and this 2-week lull, will this lull really last for 2 weeks? Or do you, I understand you're not a fortune teller, but still, based on your experience.
I would be very surprised, really surprised if there is a lull. But I would be even more surprised if in these 2 weeks we come to some kind of agreement that would suit us. I mean America. The thing is, just as Putin has no motivation to end the war in Ukraine, the same goes for, let's say, the Revolutionary Guard. From my point of view, there is no motivation at all to stop shooting at tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz. They just don't have it, period. I don't see how anything will be better for them than what they have now. Or let's say anything signed will be better than what they have now. So if they sign and basically, well, pretty much everything stays the same, like Venezuela, right? All the same people and so on. Only they give up some things to the Americans, like Venezuela gave its oil to America. And in general, I don't think Venezuela conducts its own foreign policy anymore. It consults. Now, Iran, I don't think they'd like that or go along with it. So I strongly suspect that we'll have to leave there without getting what we want.
The issue is the conflict between the US and Iran has been put on pause. Predictably, both sides declared victory. So who actually won? Questions.
Well, in a military sense, the US won, and in a political sense, Iran did at this point. Questions.
And 1 second, Leon, one more question for you. Chekhov said today that we, as the army, have achieved all the necessary results in Iran, and even more than was required of us. What do they mean by that?
They mean that when it was planned, the joint American-Israeli command put the number there at 15,000. I'm just making this up right now, but let's say there were targets they wanted to destroy, and they gave themselves, say, 60 days for it, but they destroyed them in 35 days. That's what they mean. They don't mean a change of power. They don't mean uprisings. They don't mean going somewhere and capturing something. They mean destruction. Iran's military-industrial complex has been crushed. Now, to restore it, it would take, I don't know, 5, 7, maybe 10 years. I understand that the Chinese will come. I understand that, so to speak, maybe the Russians will come when Russia's situation is very serious. Right now, they can't really do much, but they'll pretend. And the Chinese will gladly come to Iran, invest money there, and practically buy Iran. So we destroyed Iran, and they will rebuild it and become the masters there. I think that's exactly what will happen. And then whether China uses Iran like North Korea as a dog that barks, which is bad, or as a headless one, which is good, it means there won't be any war. We don't know.
Lebanon and Hezbollah, Trump says, are not included in the ceasefire agreement with Iran. So Trump emphasized that because of Hezbollah, so to speak, they are not included in the deal, but this will also be resolved. And then what do you think about this? Is this a completely different campaign? So the war isn't over, it's only over with Iran.
Well, Iran demanded, proposed freezing everything on all fronts, right? But it's incredibly bad for Israel to freeze everything. That's why Israel immediately said, we respect Trump, we respect his request, we won't bomb Iran. But our problems with Hezbollah, with Hamas, these are our problems, so we won't stop here.
What does Donald Trump's statement on Truth Social mean, in your opinion, Leon? The following. People who have nothing to do with the negotiations with Iran are spreading agreements, lists, and letters. In most cases, they are frauds, charlatans, or even worse. He went on to say that they will be exposed after our federal investigation is completed. There is only one choice. One set points with the U.S. president, and we will discuss behind closed doors during negotiations what this is about.
We live in an age of fakes, and these fakes are brilliantly made using artificial intelligence. And that's why, for example, the proposals that Iran brought through Pakistan are being circulated in different versions depending on what they proposed. And when Trump, for example, says that there are some grains of truth to recognize, and then 10 proposals from Iran are published, none of which contain anything that America can accept. So basically, Trump is made to look like a complete idiot, or someone who has surrendered, or something else. So Trump says there is a lot of common sense in some absolutely terrible things, and so on. He talks about how people who have no idea what we're discussing suddenly publish, discuss, and plant fake stories in the press.
To be continued. One more question, Leon. A comment from the Iranian side. The valiant Iranian people should know that thanks to heroic efforts and their presence on the battlefield, the enemy, for more than a month, meaning the Americans and Israelis, begged to stop the fierce fire from Iran and the axis of resistance, and so on and so forth. I also mentioned fake news. So when we...
Вот сегодня интернет заполнен этим.
And Maxim Shevchenko has already talked today about how Iran defeated the United States. Israel, well, people fall for stories like that.
If they didn't fall for it, no one would publish it, right?
Well, yeah.
That in the 20th century, people started being taught in a completely different way. In other words, people were being turned into, this was the idea, they thought it was necessary, narrow specialists and so on. But they left out two very important aspects of education. One is called critical thinking and the other is creative thinking. Both are absolutely necessary for evaluating events. Because if you don't have that little bell ringing in your head like, well, they told me this. But like when we talked with Sergey, I won't say anything bad. And he said, well, General Emelchenko said this and that, so what if he said it? And I think, well, let's check what he said against what Trump is doing, right? 99% of the population, after all, says, oh, Emelchenko said it, so that's it, right? But to think further, why did he say that? For what reason? He's such a backward, repressed, useless person, and suddenly he started getting invited to all sorts of radio shows, TV programs, and podcasts because he claimed that he knows for sure. There you go. So, well, his life changed because of this. He's happy, there's a spark in his eyes because of it. So it's quite possible that he wasn't lying, but it's also quite possible that he was. Well, then go and check. Because again, the statement that if you do good for America and bad for Russia, it means you're spying for Russia is incorrect.
I'll give you the latest comments. Everything you say, Jews, is a lie. The largest attack since the beginning of the war has started in Lebanon. Well, it's about what the Israelis are doing in Lebanon. These are Lebanese media. The American Minister of War said one way or another we will take the Iranian uranium. Iran is furious. The Israeli operation in Lebanon is issuing threats, as Iranian sources state that if Israel continues its strikes on Lebanon, Tehran will withdraw from the ceasefire agreement. According to Tehran, the ceasefire is supposedly meant to extend to Lebanon as well. Israel is blatantly violating the agreements. Israel and Iran are already identifying targets for retaliation. If the Americans are unable to restrain their rabid dog in the region, meaning Israel, Iran will do it itself by force. Your comment.
Look, there's something funny here. We Jews, well, we're terrible, of course. Yes. Scary attack dogs. That's clear. Yes. And on top of that, we're also, those kikes, right? The thing is, you forgot to mention that we've been running the world for 2,000 years. And that everything that happens in the world is done, well, according to our script, at our instigation. And even when pogroms happen, they happen because that's how we want to distract attention from the fact that we're running the world. And we say, come and stage a pogrom against us so that people will understand and think that we control the whole world. So, according to this theory, we also control Iran and Hezbollah and Lebanon. That is, for 2,000 years, especially now, after the protocols of the Elders of Zion were written, everything became known. It was written by the Tsarist secret police. So, and this is repeated many times. And in the mass media, by the way, even in the American ones now, there's someone named Tucker Carlson who keeps repeating this all the time. One more thing. We really love to mix the blood of Christian infants into matzo. And so, yes, now they've started trying to mix in the blood of Muslim infants as well. I personally read reports about this from the Iranian press, translated into English, so maybe there was some deception in the translation. So I have to tell you that what you just wrote absolutely 100% falls into the same category of reasoning that I just told you about. Yes, of course, Israel doesn't like it. Well, we don't like it when we're being shot at. How many of us are there? 7 million Jews and 3 million Arabs who live better than Arabs in any other Arab country. They told me this themselves. I had Arabs in my theater too. I had quite a few friends of, let's say, Arab origin. I never asked if you were Arab or Israeli. If a person is interesting, whether he's Arab, Israeli, or Jewish, what difference does it make? So I lived there for many years. I can swear very well in Arabic. I don't speak it well, but I can swear really well. I used to swear, not anymore. That's why people always took me for one of their own after hearing the first 25 words I said. So now what's happening? So there are 7 million people surrounded by, well, about 1.2 billion people who are always saying that if it weren't for those 7 million, they would be living much better. It's very, very similar to the Soviet Union. If it weren't for the capitalist encirclement and enemies, no, gentlemen, you just don't study, you're not curious, you don't do what needs to be done. In order to become rich, you need to produce wealth. In order to be educated, you need to produce education, you need to study. If you don't do this, you'll never have anything. I'm not talking about airplanes right now, I'm talking about a normal life. Because in the end, we all want a normal life. Of course, we want to steal a little and bring it home and make our neighbor feel bad. That's understandable. But in general, mostly, of course, we want a normal life. And in order to achieve a normal life, you don't need to run to demonstrations or shout, oh, those Jews or whoever else are bad, or the Americans are bad. They didn't take anything away from you. No one took anything from you. You have oil, you extract it, you get money from us. We use this oil for something, to heat our homes, to eat, yes. Use this money and spend it on education, not just to consume it, on education. Besides, you have so many thieves that you have more billionaires than anywhere else, in Moscow and in the Arab world. More billionaires. And usually these billionaires are the ones who get money from Europe or America to support their own people. They, to put it mildly, steal it. Yes, now Ukraine has joined you too in terms of very wealthy people. Well, that's the thing.
Leon, thank you so much for staying after our somewhat technically challenging debates. But first of all, thank you for taking part in them. And secondly, for what you just shared. This is what everyone is talking about today. And everyone is waiting for some kind of decision from someone. And today that someone is Donald Trump. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.